Right, well, I think we'll go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone to the first of 5 sessions for the Virtual Policy and Advocacy Training Series, Gearing Up for 2021. This first session is titled Civics for Change, and it's really meant to be an introduction or overview of the policymaking process. Subsequent sessions will dive deeper into some of the strategy and some of the different elements of getting a bill passed, such as communications and writing testimony and showing up and talking with your legislators. So we're really excited to kick it off today with some broad overview of the policymaking process and introduce you to others who are also interested in this process as well. Typically, we have this training every year. You can see quite a few number of partners on our bottom, so we want to recognize them. But all these organizations come together and put this on typically on a Saturday afternoon. We get people together and for about 4 or 5 hours. So we're changing things up a bit this year and want to make it more accessible for people across the state, as well as for young people or people that maybe work on Saturdays who can make it more accessible for them on the Sunday. So I just want to recognize our partners real quick: Hawaii Children's Action Network, the Hawaii Public Health Institute, the Hawaii Appleseed Center for Law and Economic Justice, HANO, Hawaii Alliance of Nonprofit Organizations, Common Cause Hawaii, Blue Zones Project, Planned Parenthood Votes, and Focused. So I'm going to now hand it over to Ali, one of our co-conveners today, to do some housekeeping.
Okay, hello everyone. So a few housekeeping rules. Please mute your audio during the presentations and use the chat box liberally. Feel free to type questions in the chat box and private message to connect with others in the session. And be prepared to turn on your cameras and unmute during our breakout session, which will be later today. And I want to quickly introduce our team. We have Jaylen from Hawaii Public Health Institute, Colby from Blue Zones Project Hawaii, Dyson from Hawaii Youth Climate Coalition, and my name is Ali, and I'm from Youth for Oahu. And I'll hand it to Dyson to go over our agenda.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ali. So for today's agenda, here's a brief overview of what we're going to be doing today. First, we're going to talk about the core of policy itself, which is an idea. Then we'll provide an overview of the actual policymaking process, and then we'll have a video to share as well. Finally, we'll then have some guests to present about what a policy win looks like, so that way you can see for yourself how it's been used. And then we're also going to provide breakout groups, which you'll see later, a featured resource, and then of course, next steps. What can you do after this? So before we get started to the rest of this training, we'd actually like to do a poll very quickly to see who's joining us today and to get a gauge on that. So, oh, there we go. So now you'll see 2 polls pop up. Please go ahead and answer these questions. Tell us what area of work or what sector you work in. If you're a student, please check off that selection. And we'll give you about 20 seconds to complete this poll. So give you 20 seconds here. All right.
And there are 2 polls there, so please complete both the first and second. And Dyson, you want to talk about the second one?
Yeah, sure. So the second poll is going to be your comfort level with policy and advocacy itself. So just go ahead and select from those levels, whether it's beginner, intermediate, or advanced, and let us know how comfortable you are with policy and advocacy work. So we'll give you another 20 seconds in order to fill out that part of the poll as well. All right, and then I think we can have the results of the poll shared. All righty, so we have awesome to see lots of high school and college students, community advocates, nonprofits are off the charts, government as well, and some others as well. Awesome. And then, wow, I like this variety. We have a pretty good mix between beginner and intermediate people. So I'm really glad that you're here. This is perfect for you. It's the reason why you're here. And then we also have some pretty advanced veterans in here as well. So this is an exciting mix. All right, wonderful. Thanks everyone for sharing, your background with us. And with that, I'll give it over to Jaylen.
Aloha, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Jaylen Murakami, and I'm the Advocacy and Outreach Coordinator at Hawaii Public Health Institute. Just wanted to reiterate, we really appreciate you spending your time with us this Sunday to learn how to become more involved in policy and advocacy. Thanks, Dyson, for running that poll. It's really exciting to see that so many of you are new to advocacy and are looking to take that first step, as well as people who are, maybe a little bit more familiar to the process, but wanting to learn a bit more. I think that with the recent events, so many people are wanting to take a more active role in shaping the policies that affect their daily lives. And like Colby mentioned at the beginning, this session is more of an introduction to policy, and the later sessions will help you build the skills and tools needed to advance your causes. So to start off, let's talk about what we mean by policy. So according to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, a policy is a set of guidelines or rules that determine a course of action. So while a lot of us may immediately think of legislation as policy, it can really be adopted by both public institutions like government or private entities like businesses. So some examples of policies could include local or county ordinances, state or federal laws, policies for state agencies or private organizations, zoning codes that regulate the use of land, and resolutions that may not have the force or effect of law, but they can be helpful in stating an official position or requesting action. So these types of the type of policy that you pursue will determine which decision-making body that can enact the change you're seeking. So now that the previous slide showed how broad policy work can be, what do they all have in common? So it's usually a written statement that is binding and enforceable and applies to a group of people. So for example, a Hawaii state law would apply to the geographic area within the state, while an organizational policy could apply to all of the employees and customers of a particular company. So now that we've defined what policy is, the better question is, why should we work on policy? So I think a commonly proposed solution to many problems is education. If we educated more people on the issue, then the problem would resolve itself. And while education is important and has its place, it's also very focused on the individual level. By creating policy, you can reach a larger audience, and it institutionalizes good ideas, establishes social norms, and offers accountability and enforcement. I think a recent example of education versus policy could be the state's current efforts to get the public to wear masks. So for the last few months, there's been almost a nonstop education campaign on the importance of wearing a mask to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And even with that, we're still seeing that people are struggling to determine if and when they need to wear a face mask. So part of the reason for that is because of the constantly changing recommendations and the varying requirements between the counties. But, recently there have been calls for a uniform statewide mask policy to reduce the confusion, while also, giving an enforcement mechanism to require actions that will help to keep our community safe. And I think this example kind of illustrates how policy and education work together. So now that you know that you want to work on policy, how do you make it happen? So it all starts with an idea, recognizing that there's a problem and a need for change. A campaign or an advocacy plan can help you reach your goal. And some of the key components to a campaign will include conducting some research and data collection. So research will help you to demonstrate the problem and support how your proposed solution will work towards your goal. So this can include things like reports from government sources like survey data, academic journal articles, news articles, just to name a few. You'll also want to work on building support through organizing and coalition building. So the next session, next week, Sunday, November 22nd, we'll go into a bit more detail on this, but working together as a group will strengthen your movement. Making a plan is also important. So setting a timeline with short and long-term goals will ensure that your campaign remains on track and allows you to make adjustments as needed. How you communicate your message to the public and decision makers is also key to a successful policy campaign. The challenge is crafting a message that will clearly communicate your concerns and goals while also moving people to action. And it's so important to keep your intended audience in mind when creating your message. So now that we've talked about some of the components, like what does that look like in terms of creating an actual plan? In the breakout groups, you'll have an opportunity to work through an example in a small group to kind of get more of a feel for it. But here are some of the basic components. So you'll want to start by defining the problem, and this will involve a lot of research and data collection because clearly defining the problem is important so that you can stay focused on your goal and clearly communicate to others what you're trying to fix. You'll also want to determine what change is needed. So at this stage, you'll be coming up with your goal, and your goal can be broad. It doesn't need to be a single policy. In fact, it can involve several policy solutions that are needed in order to achieve your goal. Research will be continues to be an important component in this phase as you learn about the root causes of the problem and can look into solutions that other places may have been implemented. So once you have some proposed solutions in mind, that will help you determine who has the ability to enact them. So, can you work on it? Is it a county ordinance, or do you have to work with the state legislature? Or maybe it's neither, and you're looking more at an organizational policy change. So depending on what your issue is, sometimes you can work on multiple levels and have more than one option for your policy change. You'll also want to organize your supporters and build a coalition to work towards your shared goal. So it's good to start with groups whose goals align with yours, but don't be afraid to think outside the box and approach groups that you may not normally work with. Likewise, you'll want to prepare for opposition from those that may not agree with your proposed solution. So in some cases, you can work together with them to reach a compromise, but other times it may not be possible, and you might want to instead prepare to counter any arguments made by the opposition. Finally, you'll want to set clear goals with timelines to regularly assess your progress. So some examples of short-term goals could include educating and organizing community members, forming a coalition, conducting a survey to research the problem, or planning an awareness event at the state capitol. And over the course of your campaign, you might need to make adjustments as needed. Like, for example, with COVID-19, you may have had a whole campaign plan ready, but needed to make adjustments due to the current environment. So now that you know how to create an advocacy plan, what is the process to pass a policy? Now I'm going to turn it over to Allie, who will be showing a short video to help you understand the process.
Thank you. So this video by Civil Beat it does a really good job presenting the complexities of the policymaking process, and it's just an introductory video, but we hope it helps to reiterate the states in the life of a bill.
All laws start out as bills. Bills can be an idea for a new law or a proposal to change an existing one. The legislature votes to pass a bill, and the governor signs it into law. Sounds simple, right? In reality, the journey from bill to law is anything but straightforward. Here is how it works. Although only legislators can introduce a bill, the bills they introduce can be influenced by the governor, special interest groups, and by us, the constituents they serve. Let's say I feel very strongly about bike safety and think all bike lanes in Hawaii should be painted red for better visibility. For this idea to become a law, I'll need a member of either the House or the Senate to sponsor it. He or she will write up the bill and introduce it to their legislative chamber. The progress of all bills can be tracked on the state's website. Bills introduced in the Senate have the abbreviation SB as part of their name. Bills originating in the House have HB. Let's say I get a senator on board with my bike lane bill, and she introduces it to her fellow senators. Senate leadership then refers it to a specialized committee. In this case, my bike lane bill will be referred to the Senate Transportation Committee. The Transportation Committee chair decides if it should get a public hearing. If not, my bill dies. If it gets a hearing, the public weighs in and the committee can decide if it wants to make changes, pass it, or defer it, which keeps the bill from moving forward. A majority of the committee must agree on a version of the bill before it can move on. Once my bike bill is approved by the committee, it's then presented to the full 25-member Senate, where they can pass my bill as is, make more changes, or vote to kill it entirely. If my bike bill gets the majority vote in the Senate, it goes to the opposite chamber, the House of Representatives, for review. The process then repeats on the House side. If no changes are made, the House can approve it and send it straight to the governor for a signature. If the House decides to make changes, for example, they want bike lanes painted blue instead of red, the bill must go back to the Senate for approval. If the House and Senate don't agree, the bill goes to a conference committee made up of members from both the Senate and the House. If lawmakers still can't agree, the bill dies. If they agree on an amended final version, it goes back to each chamber for final votes. The governor can also veto a bill, but the legislature can override that veto if 2/3 of lawmakers agree. Most bills that are introduced at the beginning of session never become law. In a recent 2-year session, almost 5,000 bills were introduced, and only 437 became law. Want to learn more? Check out these links.
Thanks, Ali, for sharing that video. It was a great overview of the state legislature's process. And I think, as you can see, the steps to passing policy may not always be straightforward. So even if you're not looking to work on state level policy, some of the components of that process may still apply. So usually the process starts with drafting and introducing a measure, which then undergoes hearings. This is the point in the process where the public has an opportunity to provide input in the form of testimony, and it can sometimes be written or verbal. From there, the decision-making body will vote to approve or reject the policy, and there may be several hearings or votes as the policy undergoes changes and goes through the process. After all of the hearings and votes, if the policy passes through those, there will usually be a final approval process, such as having the bill signed into law by the governor. And of course, he also has an option to veto it. So, there's many points in this process where a bill can, or policy can move forward or fail. So, it's really a complicated process. And I'll turn it over to Dyson, who'll kind of give an analogy on how passing policy is like a game.
Thank you, Jaylen. So to make it a little easier to understand the passage of a bill, I tried to make it into an analogy. And the analogy is that it's like a video game. So in a video game, and for this example, I'm going to use Mario. So in Mario, you have a character that you control and play with. And in, for this example, that character is Mario. Now, Mario is going to have to face certain obstacles, and those obstacles are in various different levels, which you need to pass. And then finally, once you pass those different levels and different obstacles, you can complete the game with a victory, or, if you fail to overcome an obstacle, fail to pass the level, then it's game over. You got to start back from the beginning. And with legislation and bills, it's somewhat similar, except instead of a character, you have your legislation. That legislation, just like you have those obstacles in a video game, that legislation needs to pass opposition. It needs to, hurdle over opposition that's going to pop up in various forms, such as in hearings. And different types of support, whether it's, from the legislators themselves, advocacy groups, helpful PR, or testimony from the public. These kinds of things help you to pass your bill and can help you to overcome some of those challenges. And then, just like as in a video game, you have this end result, which can be either your bill passes and it's like, yay, or your bill doesn't pass and, you give it your next shot again. And just like in a video game, you usually don't pass the entire video game just in one go, right? Usually you're going to get to the point where you fail a level and you got to redo that level. And it's the same thing with passing into bills, just that it's over the period of a year. Usually you don't write a bill and boom, like in the first year the bill is introduced, it passes. That's very, very rare, if it ever happens. And so, your bill, it might die in a committee, there might be certain opposition against it. And so what you do is the next year, the next session, you go back to it and try it again, this time with some new lessons learned. And so, of course, when you're trying to pass legislation, usually the stakes are going to be higher than if you're playing a video game. But ultimately, I wanted to give this analogy just to hopefully give you a better and more general understanding of how this whole process works.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dyson. Next, we're going to have a representative talk about Bill 40. But before we get there, we wanted to give everyone an opportunity to kind of share some of their own tips and ways that they look at policy. So I want to quickly just bring up this slide, and all of you may have different experiences with policy, and so if you have any tips, we wanted to have you share it in the chat box. And please, it could be anything from talking about some strategies you have to building coalitions, to finding allies that you can working with your legislator, ways to be informed and do research. So go ahead and share those tips, and we're going to go down and have all of our speakers today kind of share a tip really quickly. So Allie, do you want to start us off and share one of your tips that you have?
Yeah, sure. So I am fairly new to policy, but after joining the Youth for Oahu campaign, I was able to see for myself how change happens through resolutions and ballot measures. So my tip would be to volunteer with a campaign or initiative that you care about and that you're passionate about. I promise that you'll learn a lot along the way, and it feels good to be a part of something, And I'll pass it to Dyson.
Cool, Ali. Yeah, for me, I would just say incorporate youth into your campaign if at all possible. And don't just do it as like a checkbox and something you have to do, but really make them an integral part of your campaign. Make them leaders in your campaign. A lot of organizations and movements, they either don't or didn't have a lot of youth incorporated in them until really the last couple of years. And in that last couple of years, we've seen youth take the lead in a lot of initiatives, such as the initiatives to take on such as the climate movement. And so as we're about to see also, Colby mentioned this earlier with Bill 40, that was another movement where youth were just a really key and critical part in getting the legislation passed. So definitely encourage you to engage, involve, and incorporate youth into your efforts. And I'll give it over to Colby.
Great. My tip is about looking at your stakeholder base. A lot of I guess campaigns in the past have really focused on the nonprofits, the industry partners, the ones that are doing this work on a day-to-day basis. But broadening your scope of who the bill could affect. From who are the parents or the grandparents of children, if it's a child policy. How do churches get involved, and how do churches might care about an issue that you're handling, or what other partners across industries or cross sectors could jump in and also care about your issue, because it also supports their efforts as well. And so looking at a broader stakeholder group and seeing how they can support your bill is really important. Jaylen, how about you?
Thanks, Colby. I think my tip is more along the lines of like listening to what the community has to say. So I like to read over all of the comments and testimony that was submitted when my bill is getting heard. And it really helps me to see like what's being said and helps me to find like new allies, identify what the opposition is saying and plan for ways to counter them. And, you know, just by reading it, you can kind of get a feel for what's effective and most convincing. So highly encourage you to listen to what others have to say beyond just your own messaging.
Excellent. So it looks like Doré is joining us and she's gonna be able to share her slides in a bit. Doré, you ready to go?
Yeah, ready when you guys
All
are.
right. We're gonna have Dyson do a quick introduction and we'll hand it over to you.
Awesome, sweet. So yeah, we've been talking earlier a lot about the process of a bill. We've shared with you some inside tips, and wonderful to look at the chat and see everyone sharing tips as well. Now, what we want to do is to provide you with a real life example of a piece of legislation and how it got incorporated into the community and become law ultimately. And so for this, we actually have Doré Shin from Surfrider Oahu. So Doré, if you would like to take the microphone from me.
Yeah. And then if you guys want to give me host privileges, and then I can share, I don't have too many slides, but just a few for visual. But I'll start by introducing myself. So hi, everyone. My name is Doré Shin. I work at Surfrider Foundation full-time for the Oahu chapter. And okay, I see that. Thank you. I will go screen here. Great. Yeah, so I work for the Surfrider Foundation, and our mission at Surfrider is to protect and enjoy our ocean, beaches, and waves through a powerful activist network, for those who aren't familiar. And I'm 28, so I still consider myself a youth. Hopefully I'm still invited to the youth club. But I started being an activist when I was 15. So I started working at a nonprofit, which was focused on immigrant rights mostly, and helping Korean Americans just get access and justice. So I was doing a lot of immigrant rights work at a very young age. So I really love youth activism. I think it's key to kind of building a better future overall, is just to have that young generation be empowered in that way. So I'm really honored to be here. And then when I was 18, I moved out to Hawaii, and I realized how severe the climate crisis was. And so I kind of pivoted early on in college from political and immigration issues over to sustainability issues. And that's really where I started to focus on climate change and plastic. And so when I first got involved, when I was around 19 at UH, we tried to ban styrofoam. So we started a petition, and we just started a campaign around styrofoam. And that's really where I kind of got into the community, learned how things worked. And that was the easiest campaign I've ever worked on. And within 4 months, we had a petition, we had the chancellor verbally saying he would support us, and we had a policy passed just 4 months into a campaign. So I don't recommend expecting those kinds of easy results. It happens sometimes, but a lot of things need to come together at once. But typically there's opposition and all this stuff going on. So I'll talk a little bit about that today, although I'm sure many of you are already experts in this area. So I'm going to talk primarily about the 40, what happened, the history, but before, I think that the history is really important, because before I had even lived in Hawaii, there were folks who had been involved long before myself and many of our other young activists. So for over 10 years, they were trying to pass a styrofoam ban. They did successfully ban plastic bags and a couple other things, but they were very unsuccessful at really tackling anything else. And so the history there is that our political system is the same as at the national level. Businesses and lobbyists make campaign contributions to legislators and council members, and it makes our representatives it makes it harder for them to do the right thing. And so for years and years and years, they were ignoring the plastics issue because they were hearing from big companies like Zippy's and ABC stores and, big Hawaii Restaurant Association and such, that this would just cause the economy to just fail and everything would be terrible. So the cool thing about what happened with Bill 40 was that this is like 13 years into styrofoam ban attempts at the city and state level that all failed year after year. And what happened was, because the issue over time, people started to really care about plastic because of the turtle with the straw in its nose and this whole global movement that's been spread to really care about plastic pollution. So City Council member Joey Manahan had introduced a bill, which we know as Bill 40, and he didn't really tell anybody that he introduced it. So he and his staff put this bill together, and we were all like, me, Dyson, many others were like, what is this bill? Like, should we support it? Let's look it over. So that's really when we started to like get involved in that process, meet with council members. And we just, I think it was like October or November, or no, it was early, like summer of last year, that we really started to like ramp up the efforts to try to pass this bill and amend it so that it was really strong. But something I like to share around Bill 40, like we all know now that it passed, it's now becoming law soon. But something that I like to share that we don't talk about really is that, there's all these activists, there's all these strategies that come into play, but really like what had happened in this situation was our city council on Oahu, Honolulu City Council has 9 members. So you need 5 votes at the very end of that process to win a bill. So you need to have at least 5 to 4 to win. So typically the way a bill passes is it goes through a committee. So previously, all of our plastic bills were going through the Public Safety Committee. Oh no, sorry, they were going through the Sustainability Committee, because naturally this is the sustainability issue. Unfortunately, the chair of that committee is Councilmember Fukunaga, and she's, I like to simplify it and say she's bought out by lobbyists and she doesn't care about plastic issues. So she was just kind of, every time it got to her committee, she would hear the bill and then say, we're deferring this bill. Every single time it was like, we're deferring this bill. We're not letting it go to full council. It's dying right here is pretty much how that went down. And there was just nothing we could do about that because that was the way the structure is set up. So there was a special election right before this bill was introduced, and it was between Tommy Waters and what's his name? Trevor Ozawa. And Trevor Ozawa had previously been pretty antagonistic around plastic issues, didn't want to do anything, mostly like was in opposition, would vote against these plastic bills. But they were in a head-to-head race. I think it was the election came out, I think, was it 40 votes apart, Dyson? Do you remember how far apart 22? Yeah, so the votes were so close that they took it to court and they said, we're going to do a special election. We're going to let folks in your district vote again. And Trevor had actually won, so it wouldn't have been great for our plastic efforts. And so they did a special election the following month. And then in that special election, in the Kaimoki, Hawaii Kai area, folks voted and Tommy Waters ended up winning by 1,000 votes in the special election. So that flipped the council. So it went from being pretty unfriendly to sustainability issues to pretty friendly. So that's really, really important here because you're always having to count votes when you're trying to pass a bill. So always consider like how you're going to count the votes and if you have enough to win. So that gave us a pretty good chance just going into it from the very get-go. But it was still obviously a challenge. You have folks with the most money here, you have huge lobbyists, you have huge business associations, all spreading lies and misinformation about this. And, I think something that was really stressful for us working on this was that you would have, the CEO of Zippy's and all these folks putting out these op-eds in the media, being in the news, doing interviews, putting out all of this information on radio shows, really just saying like, if we pass Bill 40, the we're not going to have any more local businesses, and saying that we were trying to ban 100% of all plastic packaging, and there was no plastic packaging included. It was just for takeout material. So they were spreading lies and fear and really starting to make it more difficult for us to advocate for things. So eventually it got to a place where we had such strong support, and it looked like we were going to get the bill 5-4. So it passed through committee, went to council, went through like dozens of amendments, constant amendments, just like the bill's very long. And you're just constantly negotiating things like, do we want to do this with plastic bags? Do we want to do this with plastic forks? What about plastic straws? So it's really complex when you get into the details. But at the end of the day, you know, we thought we were going to have 5-4, but then what happened in that final hearing was really interesting, because we were having council members walk out of the room and come back in. So there was, you know, something going on another part of the island. So some of the council members had to leave. So there was like, we're like, okay, we have our like 5 or 6 votes, but we have folks leaving. And if they leave, we're not going to have their votes. And it was really funny because we had all these youth lined up to testify. And we actually got to the point where it was so like anxiety filled that we weren't going to have all the council members we needed to get the votes, that we were telling the youth, like, you need to sit down, you can't testify, because if they don't vote like in 5 minutes, we're not going to win. And it's like, what's not worth you testifying, because we know we have the vote. So there's interesting things like that you need to stay on top of when you're going for these things. But it was really cool. At the end of the day, you know, the vote went 7-2. And so obviously we won some votes back, and we actually won some votes that we didn't think we were going to win. And one of the stories I like to share around that is that Housekeeping is a council member on the North Shore. And so she represents that whole area. From the very beginning of the process, she was saying, I'm going to vote no on this. She was telling kids in school, she was telling her community, I'm voting no on Bill 40. It goes too far. It hasn't been done correctly. And so what happened between then and her yes vote is that her most famous constituents all posted on Instagram about this. So it was John Florent, Jack Johnson, Kelly Slater, folks with tens of millions of followers, some of them, or millions of followers. And I think that she flipped because of that, like, because there was so much public support of this bill that she didn't want to be on record opposing something that was so popular in her district. So she ended up voting yes with reservations, which was a surprise to us. If we knew that going in, we would have been a lot less worried. So that was really, really good. So right now, Bill 40 stands as the strongest, one of the strongest plastic bans in the nation. That continues to change as more and more states and cities pass really great laws. And, you know, I think something that maybe some of you know is that Dyson was huge in leading this youth effort. So I think you guys have a group text coordinating all these high school youth, but for multiple hearings, he was bringing this huge scroll that he was just unraveling, like taller than all of our bodies, unraveling. So he'd get up and testify. You'd have 12 youth behind him unraveling an epic scroll of thousands of signatures. And you have all these news folks starting to take pictures and taking videos for the news. And you have all the council members all like feeling like all the drama, and some of them look really inspired. So I think, you know, you need all of these things. You need the election, you need the youth inspired, you need to skip school and come out to these things. You know, you need to have the experts, and you need to have the businesses to be busting those myths that this is the worst thing ever, the sky's gonna fall down, you're gonna have food shortages. So you need to be like constantly doing op-eds and media, and really counteracting all of these oppositional forces. But eventually, like, if you have all those things, you know, going for you, then you have a pretty promising path to passing a bill. I know I'm pretty much out of time here, but I wanted to share something that was a request. But talking about the current opposition. So right now, the Bill 40 is going to go into 2 phases. So we have phase 1 coming this January, and phase 2 coming the following January. And we still have the same folks, the CEO of Zippy's, the Chamber of Commerce, the Hawaii Restaurant Association, constantly. I'm on their newsletter, so I get their newsletters. constantly putting out all this stuff like, you need to help us delay Bill 40, you need to blah, 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 putting out all these news articles and saying, you know, Bill 40 is going to kill businesses during COVID. So they're using the same exact argument, but then they're saying because of COVID. And I'm like, well, you were saying the same stuff before COVID even existed. So it's just annoying that they'll do anything to stop action. And right now they're trying to delay the bill, but we're trying to counter that. And we actually have a webinar on Tuesday for the public and for businesses. I can send that info to you guys to really explain, like, this is actually good for businesses because this first phase requires businesses to provide utensils and straws upon request. We all have a junk drawer at home full of overflowing plastic forks and chopsticks and stuff from our takeout because we don't need them because we eat them at home. And so this first phase of the bill actually requires that businesses give them out only if the customer requests them. So it's going to save them thousands of dollars. It's going to save us all that waste. It's going to be good for the environment. So we're trying to raise awareness about the truth that this first phase is actually good for business, not bad for business. During COVID, they should actually be grateful that there's a bill that can save, a law that can save them money. So anyway, there's a lot of people spreading lies, and you'll find that the people spreading lies are the ones that are profiting off of their lies. So be careful of that. But we're really, really stoked that this bill is happening. And I will share my contact info here at the end, just so you guys can see that. But this is my contact info on our Instagram. So feel free to reach out to me if you have questions. And Dyson's also an expert in all these things. He put in so much of his time. Thank God for homeschooled kids, right? They have a way more flexible schedule. So he's also an amazing resource on this bill. So thank you guys.
Ooh, awesome. Thank you so much, Dora. And yeah, everyone feel free to either give some snaps, claps. You can use the virtual reactions as well. Yeah, thank you so much, Dora, for giving us the context on Bill 40, a real life, solid, concrete example of how you can win with legislation, even when the odds might be stacked against you. And so everyone, you're absolutely welcome to contact Dora via the Surfrider Wahoo Instagram, or send her an email if you have any questions, or if you drop questions in the chat, Dora, you can go ahead and type in your answers to any of those questions as well. But with that, we're actually going to move on, and I'll hand the mic over to Colby.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Dora. It's always inspiring to hear that story and to hear it from the perspective of the legislators as well. And I've had multiple conversations with Councilmember Waters about that. And he always likes to share how the youth use different tactics, and it kind of really brought out lots of people from different communities and spoke out about this, and it really changed the voting. And I also like that this bill, there's a national movement around this. There's a statewide movement. There was some efforts done at the state level to pass this, and then they took it to the county levels. There's always something to consider as well, as sometimes things don't need to be passed at the state level. And you can look at changes to administrative rules at different departments, or different private or community policies that can change, that can help pass these as well. And of course, county level policy change. So now we're going to go into we wanted to make this practical and give you some practice in policymaking and designing campaigns. And we wanted to have these simulations. So we're going to break you all into small groups. You'll each be given a facilitator that will help you through this process. And we want to explore, what is it like to think about designing a policy? So you'll get into your group. Please start with a quick introduction. Introduce yourself, where you call home. If you're affiliated to any organization or a school, please share that. And then maybe a quick policy interest area, like, are you here because you want to change education policy, you want to make our community safer or healthier, you want to address some of our climate change issues. Feel free to share a quick policy interest area. And then quickly as a group, decide on what kind of policy or issue you want to, or what kind of issue or problem you want to address. It's something that you guys can work together through, maybe something that everyone might have an interest in. But if not, it's still worth it to go through this process to kind of explore what this might look like to design a solution through policy that addresses that issue or problem. The facilitator will help guide you. So, if you're to ask questions, and I'm sure everyone in your group will be able to give insights as well. I know some of our elected officials are also on the board. So if you get stuck with one of them in the group, it's really a blessing, because you can ask them exactly some insights from their perspective. Once you guys complete the workshop, and each facilitator is given access to this This is an example. Everyone will have this to help guide the discussion, and the facilitator will help document all of your notes. So you can share some of your ideas. And this is an example from our Youth for Oahu campaign that we passed the ballot measure, which started with a resolution. And we talked about different solutions to a problem of how do we get more youth involved in the policymaking process. And so you'll see some of the various solutions we came up with. And then eventually it ended up being a youth commission ballot measure. But you'll work through this document together. You'll have 20 minutes to discuss this. And then after that, please decide on an individual from your group to do a quick 2-minute share out together with the rest of the attendees today. So this will be the worksheets. And I believe Jaylen will be able to send you out into your groups. And we look forward to seeing you in 20 minutes. And please, the groups are small, about 6 to 8 people. And we meant for that to be that way so that young people that aren't as experienced, people that are experienced can all have an equal say in contributing to the discussion. So please use this opportunity to ask questions and share insights and work together toward this mini campaign strategy meeting. All right, as we come back to the main room, we're excited to hear all of your discussions. We're gonna do a quick report out. So if everyone can take between 1 and 2 minutes, that'd be awesome. Just kind of high level, what do you plan to do? What are some things you considered? What are some steps you might take to get that policy measure passed and what that issue might look like, all right? So we're gonna start with team 1. Please get ready and have your reporter share. And team 1.
Okay, so I was the facilitator of the group. We didn't get a chance to finish, but I also wasn't able to share my screen, so they weren't able to really follow what my notes were taking down. So I just want to kind of quickly go over. We try to come up with a issue or a problem that maybe all of us were kind of interested in so that we could help build our skills around that item. So we're talking about youth and voting, and we had some side conversations, but generally that was kind of a big issue that all of us had opinions on. And we just wanted to be able to, you know, have more education out there so that more youth would be more involved in wanting to vote, and then having all of the challenging the disinformation. And then that way, eventually we can lower the voting age to 16 because people will be more empowered or more likely to support a bill to lower the age if that group of 16 to 18-year-olds are all of a sudden turning out, voicing their opinion and being strong about it. And we have a list of people who could fix it, which probably also duplicates as people who can agree with us or support us because we want to get their support in order to move forward. We haven't necessarily jumped into talking about who opposes us, but basically the plan is if you can get rid of some of that disinformation, then people can have trust into the system, and then you'll get a lot more people to open their ears and open their eyes. Maybe if anyone in our group wants to add, I'll open the floor, but that's it from me.
This is excellent. And actually, there's actually efforts going on around this right now. So this is good support for that. Thank you so much, team 1. All right, moving on to team 2. Someone want to share?
Sure, I can go ahead and share for this group.
1 to 2 minutes.
All right, time pressure's on. Okay, so the issue that we decided to focus on is sustainability, and more specifically speaking, Hawaii's awful food security. And some of the things that we wanted changed was, stop treating our food with toxic chemicals, fix our education system, getting closer to the root of the problem, and try to promote education at a young age. And then, changing these empty, barren lots into places where food can be grown. So in terms of fix it, the first one we came up with was the community, like us, you, me, everybody. We also decided that the Department of Agriculture is probably going to have quite a big stake in this as well. Some of the solutions that we went over were increasing the number of community gardens, also increasing education starting at a young age in elementary schools in terms of sustainability, creating a paid position in government to promote sustainable local agriculture, and providing an increased funding to local farmers. We weren't able to holistically go over these last 3 points, but presumably local farmers would support this. We were thinking potential opposition, A and B, Alexander Baldwin, could be a potential big opposition piece to this. And unfortunately, we never quite got to the plan, but there was some really great conversation that happened in this group.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Team 2. Very, very good. Team 3, somebody want to share from Team 3?
Hey everyone, this is Chelsea. I'm going to go ahead and share out for my team. So we had a lot of different backgrounds, but we decided to focus on an issue that we've heard of recently, and that was that local farmers currently don't have a really reliable source of income, and that they're more sensitive to business, especially during times like these. And so what we would like to see change is more institutions purchase fresh food, local foods, just so that our farmers have a little bit more reliable support. They don't have to rely on just on the farmers markets. And so we were all kind of in the beginner intermediate, so we might not be accurate with some of the things we identified, but we thought that folks who have purchasing power, like Department of Ed, hospitals, prisons, would be able to fix this issue, and requiring institutions to source fresh food, local food, and maybe requiring grocery stores like Safeway or something to purchase a greater percentage of their stores locally. We were thinking that, oh man, my group was absolutely awesome. Yeah, so they found that landowners would maybe be able to get behind this, like ham schools, Department of Hawaiian Homelands, Association of Small Farmers, and of course the folks who would be eating the food, like the students, the patients, and other individuals. And right before we got cut off, someone had suggested chefs and local restaurants could get behind it as well. Of course, the folks who might be in opposition of this is the corporate farmers, big shipping companies, and we were also thinking that departments who would be able to fix this issue might be against this issue, because who wants more work, right? So we didn't get to talk about the plan too much, but the members of my team were really interested in, of course, getting data and getting opinions of the people who would be affected by this. And they also said that they wanted to survey the farmers to see what they would be capable of providing.
Love it. Thank you so much, everyone from Team 3. Team 4, please share.
Hi, my name is Kendra. I'm representing Team 4. And we talked about the issue being lack of connective green spaces, which then prevents species from being able to migrate from location to location and causes biodiversity loss. So I know it's a couple of leaps to make, so just bear with me. So basically, loss of biodiversity and habitat fragmentation, which is really important both to preventing climate change and also to ensuring that our environment is healthy. So we talked about a couple of things that we could focus on changing. The first would be urban planning, so making sure that we're reducing our habitat fragmentation and habitat loss. So we talked about a couple ways you could do that, which the first would be making green spaces reconnected, such as by doing some sort of overpass highway that's a green space that species can cross over, or retrofitting old spaces. And then we talked about who could fix it. One could be a zoning or a planning department that requires this to be a part of new constructions and new infrastructure. Another would be the Department of Transportation. So it's often transportation-centered infrastructure that can cut through these spaces. So I talked about the one solution being overpasses over highway to connect green spaces. We didn't have a lot of other solutions right off the bat, but there are a lot of other solutions. So I'm sure if this was actually introduced to the community, there would be a lot of ideas and thought about for more than 15 minutes. We could probably get even further. And then we thought about who else agreed with us and or supports us. So a couple of people that came up were urban planners, people that understand the way that these things are integrated. Also Native Hawaiian groups, so people who really do understand the value of the land and who have used the land for a long time and for whom it's sacred or just important to their lifestyles. And then construction traders, so possibly people who are who are, building projects or also using the land. And then we talked a little bit too about like farmers who need like the soil to be a certain level of healthy. Then also people who would oppose us might be kind of similar to, I think someone said before, like the departments who would be in charge of fixing the issue might not want to actually do that. So like, zoning planners or people who work in construction and would value from repurposing the land. And then we also talked about like transportation businesses and then communities with long commute times, because it's not a very exciting thing to think about having a longer commute time or not being able to reduce your commute time because of less road construction. So we thought about a couple things for a plan, including public education, outreach with the project, and then like reaching out to cities like those in Asia. So kind of think somebody mentioned something like this earlier that have done similar projects. So yeah, that's
awesome. Thanks so much, Team 4. All right, Team 5 and on, please, maybe a minute. If we can go a minute, that'd be great. Thank you. Team 5? Or less than a minute, maybe. Thanks.
So I'll just share for us real quick. Team 5, we kind of looked at the creative sector and kind of being able to emphasize performers and not just like your traditional art, but kind of what that includes, as well as the entire industry of the creative sector. So the game plan would be, or the action item would be, to change it from being an underlining kind of sector or group of folks under, like tourism and things like that, but create it its own and kind of make sure that the public is aware of the economic contributions that performers bring and the kind of unique place that Hawaii has to kind of, provide that space of encouragement. And so.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Cassidy. All right, Team 6.
Hi, everyone. It's Trisha Chica. I will report. This is an issue I really care about. So expanding public pre-K for 3 to 4-year-olds. As we know, during this pandemic, childcare has been a huge issue for our families. We talked about just, I think overall the solution, either public, private, but really providing access for families, as it really has to be seen as an early investment that will really have long-term benefits for our workers, our working families, but particularly it has to be seen as something that really promotes workforce retention and overall improves the community in the long run. So opposition will just be, there's no funding for it right now. There's no workforce that will be able to, sustain it too. But yeah, everybody needs childcare. So hopefully some of our lawmakers can take it up, maybe if not next year, the year after.
Absolutely. Team 7, thanks so much for sharing. Team 6.
Hi, okay, so we had a lot of ideas, but I think the main one that we went with was incentivizing companies and individuals to work from home. And that kind of targets like the environment piece, and then what else is there? It improves lifestyles, reduces stress, reduces traffic, and then companies, let's see. Like the open office spaces can go to be repurposed for the homeless, or that's pretty much what I think we got. And then people who agree with us would be like housing advocates, labor groups, people in public health, social services, and environmental groups. A lot of opposition exists, though. There would be like commercial landlords, small businesses, people who work in places like Walmart. We get opposition from both sides. Broadband companies, infrastructure challenges would exist. So the plan for us would be to talk with stakeholders or policymakers, senators, people in the specific committees that have to do with environmental justice or even human services. And let's see, it says state budget and build a coalition and pass a law.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Group 7. Group 8, real quick.
Yep, it'll be quick. We had
Perfect.
Same as other groups. We had lots of ideas. We decided to focus on access to healthcare. What would change, or what do we want to change? Better management of COVID, lessen the disproportionate rates of diabetes, and then loss of insurance due to loss of employment. Who can fix it? We said public health organizations. That was when we went on kind of some tangents and then had an internet glitch. So possible solutions, mask mandates, which we know are kind of in the works, year-round open enrollment for Medicaid and Medicare, and then no income guidelines or either reduced or removed. Who would agree? Probably health providers, employers, the tourism board, because we know our state depends on tourist dollars and we have had none in the past 9 months. Who would oppose? Insurance companies. And then ultimately our plan would look something like year-round open enrollment with no income guidelines for those who lost insurance due to an impact of COVID.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Team 9.
Hi, I'm Haley. So for Team 9, we decided to focus on food waste because it's a big issue on Maui and I'm sure on the other islands. Specifically, we focused on diverting food waste from the landfill to the ag lands. So we thought people that could be involved are the Department of Health, Department of Agriculture, and that's like a county level issue who handles the landfills. Some ideas we thought of were the counties regulating composting in homes, and then also education, teaching people how to compost and what they compost. Creating scale, because we know that not just like 1 or 2 people can change it, but we have to make a bigger scale project, and then legislation. And then those that can support us on this would be the Department of Environmental Management, Department of Health, Hawaiʻi Farm Bureau, local farmers, and then also nonprofits that are focused on environment and sustainability.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Team 9. Team 10.
Amanda, did you want to share?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so we talked about something that's applicable right now, and that's requiring citizen participation via virtual. So like boards, testimony, all that kind of stuff. So we would want to mandate that the virtual aspect be accessible for everybody who needs it. And then, so who can fix it? There's a couple of different ways. It could be like an administrative change, that makes this a requirement, of the clerks or whoever prepares the meetings, or it also could be put into policy, into law to make it a requirement. And then possible solutions, WebEx, Zoom. We got to make sure we improve bandwidth, and then who would agree with us? Good governing organizations, marginalized communities, media outlets, geographically challenged, Common Cause as an example of good governing groups. Who would oppose? Normally, we were thinking maybe conservatives who are worried about unnecessary charges or work that may come onto the budget. And then what is the plan? We would want to address the issues that people who have opposition, what the opposition is, and then find out who our allies and champions are.
Thank you so much. Okay, quickly, Team 12. Ooh, I like this one.
Hi, my name is Leanne, and I'm reporting for our group that stretched all the way from Hilo to Kauai. And we approached this a little differently because one of our group members was closely involved with the passage of state law, Safe Routes for Kids. And so Bev from Kauai can tell you much more about the details about the law and the advocacy efforts. I would like to focus on who else agrees with you and or supports you, because Bev said several times who would vote against Safe Routes for Kids. And so everybody was on board with the concept of the bill, but the opposition came from 2 legislators who were opposed to the special fund. And so the solution was a $10 surcharge on any citation that you get. That goes into a special fund to develop safe routes for kids. And then going one step backwards, who can fix it? And it involved Department of Health, DOE, and the Department of Transportation. So within state government, it had a broad level of involvement from different departments.
Okay. Thanks so much. I love safe routes. All right, team 13, real quick.
Hi, everybody. So the group had a lot of great ideas, but the one they decided to focus on was vaping with our youth. So they were looking at the large number, of vapors that we have, the death tolls, and looking at increasing health and safety, really partnering with like DOH, DHHS, and looking at solutions such as incremental tax over 3 years, so 1%, 2%, and 3%, using that revenue to fund and balance out our budget because we've been hit so hard. Anti-nicotine campaigns, educational programs, maybe a state program, really forming a coalition with those who agree with us, looking at nonprofits, other organizations, those who have some kind of personal tie to it, thinking about those who oppose us, obviously the companies, cigarette companies, and those who sell vaping products. And then really trying to pull this whole plan together by, as we were talking in the introductions, by really forming a coalition, having a movement to show the strength behind it so that this could become law and be passed. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah. All right, team 14. Yeah, 30
Hi,
seconds.
this is Nicole. We also were interested in composting food waste for people's homes. There are some folks with really detailed knowledge, so we pretty much just talked about the policy solutions at the county level. You can see it in that box. We didn't get up to most of the creating a campaign to change or to get those policies passed, but lots of ideas on how to get our food waste composted.
Thank you so much. And then finally, team 14, or 15, sorry.
Our issue is underage drinking among teens in Hawaii. So obviously we want to reduce and stop underage drinking. We talked about engaging education partners, schools, youth, organizations that work with youth, law enforcement, substance abuse treatment centers, and businesses who can help fix it. And then some of the solutions we talked about were having laws around private parties that happen with alcohol drinks where youth are present. We also talked about increasing tax on alcohols and using that money to fund programming for youth, specifically like after school programs or other youth programs that create structured time for youth when they're alone. And then also talked about banning alcohol in supermarkets or regulating the times when you can purchase alcohol.
Awesome. Okay, great. Thanks so much, everyone. Really appreciate the time there. Really want to thank our facilitators for making this possible and supporting that. So that's just a quick overview there. Finally, Ali, I apologize, it's 4:30, but we want to go a little bit over if it's okay. Please stay on. Really good information from our next speaker. Ali, you want to introduce our next speaker?
Yeah, sure. So once again, thank you for participating in our breakout rooms. Our next presenter is Keanu Young with the Public Access Room, who will speak briefly on some of the resources that they offer. If you plan to work on policy at the state legislature, you'll definitely find yourself reaching out to them at some point. And as a reminder, please put any questions in the chat box, and if we have time, we'll get to it at the end. So I'll pass it to Keanu.
Hey, thanks, Ali. Good afternoon, everybody. I know you guys have been working hard. Again, my name is Keanu Young. I'm the Assistant Coordinator of the Public Access Room. We're a legislative resource office here at the Capitol, taxpayer-funded, nonpartisan resource office. We're a division of the Legislative Reference Bureau. Just real quick, I just wanted to talk about, where are we? I wanted to talk about actually our website real quick. This is our website address. Our website address is lrb.hawaii.org/par. You can find everything that you need to know about the legislature. If you go to our legislative learn page, this is our home page. Off of the Learn tab, if you didn't know anything about the legislature and were wanting to start, you had an idea and wanted to work with the legislature, you can go to the overview of the legislative process page. And then we have everything to every kind of information that you would want to know. If you had an idea for a bill and you want to know how you get that started, we have information here. We kind of walk you through the steps on how a bill becomes law. we talk about what they do in the public hearings, understanding the budget process, what happens on the floor. So our Learn page is a really important page to go to because you can read through this and really have a really great understanding of the legislative process. We also have a kids page that's also on here. If you have youngsters that want to get involved, we teach in a kind of fun way. We even have a coloring book that we worked on. And so we kind of walk people through the process, but we do this in a way that children can understand as well. In our Engage page, if you go to our Engage page, we have YouTube videos on how you can do different things, how you can find your senators and representatives, how you can register for an account on the website. If you plan to submit testimony through the website, want to sign up for hearing notifications so you get notices when bills that you care about are being heard. You have to sign up through, or want to create measure tracking lists, you have to register for an account on the website. It's pretty simple, but we walk you through those steps. How you can sign up for hearing notices and submitting testimony. We have, you can watch the video and you'll have a better understanding of how it's done. And also how to learn to search for bills and to keep track of bills. Our last page is a persist page. So this talks about how you can enjoy, well, actually, a lot of people say you're not going to really enjoy a public hearing unless, it's easy for your bills to get passed. But we talk about what to do at the hearing, what to do after the hearing, and also how you can communicate with your legislators. And how you can use the interim period, after session happens, how you can stay engaged. So I'm talking kind of quickly because I know I have a little bit of time, but this is the place to go. So again, it's lrb.hawaii.gov/PAR. The Capitol has been closed down since March, I think. And so we've been doing a lot of our training online. If you guys want to learn about the legislative process, we do have lots of presentations, different types of presentations, and we can tailor it to your level of learning. You can send us an email at PAR@capitol.hawaii.gov, or you can give us a call at 587-0478, and we could set you up for virtual training. Right now, we usually around this time, we're traveling around the neighbor islands and around Oahu, taking our office and our office resources out to the public. But because of the COVID pandemic, we're actually doing most of our training via the Zoom platform and via the internet. So just wanted to let you guys know that we're here for you. It's just Virginia, Beck, and myself. We're pretty busy, which keeps us happy because, makes the days go by, the hours at work go by faster. But we do have lots and lots of information. Both Virginia and myself have worked at the legislature for a long time. We've actually worked, she worked in the Senate and I worked in the House. So we do have a lot of information and we're happy to share that information with you. So with that, I'll turn it back to the moderator.
Hi, Keanu. Thank you so much for that helpful presentation. I apologize that you were so rushed, and I really hope that people will take the time to explore the public access room website because they just have so much information. Like even if you're familiar with the process, they have all of the contact information for lawmakers. Like when the building reopens, they have all of the room numbers. So really encourage you to check it out. And they have a lot of helpful videos too to walk you through the process in more detail. And I've always reached out to the public access room and have always been greeted by very friendly staff. They're always so willing to help. So highly encourage you to reach out to them too. So to close out our training, just wanted to mention some resources that you can use to, as we move forward. I encourage you to come to all of our future sessions in this series. We have 4 more. They'll really help to build on the skills that you've learned. Like this presentation was really just an introduction. And so they'll help you go a little bit deeper to build those skills. The trainings were structured to help you leading up to the legislative session, and you can register at policyadvocacytraining.com. So I also wanted to cite some of the sources we used to put together this PowerPoint. So we were very inspired by the Change Lab Solutions website, as well as the Center for Healthy Communities Advocating for Change manual. So I'll put the link in the chat box so you guys can check that out too. And when we share the slides, the links will work to take you to their websites. So now that we've reached the end of our presentation, just wanted to ask everyone to please fill out the evaluation form for our training. I'll put the link in the chat, but the QR code on the screen will also take you to our evaluation. It'll really help us improve our future sessions and trainings. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself or Colby. Our contact information is on this slide. Wanted to give a special thank you to all of our presenters, as well as our facilitators for helping to make this training possible. And also thank you to all of our attendees for spending your Sunday with us. Again, I apologize for running a little bit over, but I hope you found this information helpful, and we hope to see you at future sessions. Mahalo.
Hey guys, I was just wondering, how will we be able to access the recording to this session?
Thanks for that question. So, oh, before I forget, Keanu did say he could stay on for a few minutes. So if you have any questions for the public access room, feel free to type them in the chat box and Keanu may be able to get to them. But I'm not sure if we're going to post this on the policy and advocacy training website or if we're going to send it through email yet, but we are recording it and plan to share both the recording and the slides.
Sweet.
I'm not, probably sometime next week, maybe a little bit after, but
After
we
the
will be
next
sending
session.
it.
Okay,
Yeah.
sweet. I'll just look in the email, as well as what was the website called?
Policyadvocacytraining.com. So where you registered, I think we might post it there, or we might just send it through email.
Awesome. You guys did an amazing job. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this.
Thanks for joining us, Aliyah.
See you guys next weekend.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you, Aliyah.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Amy.
Bye.
Hey, Keanu.
Hey.
Hi, I'm Christopher Edwards. I was going to ask, can you tell us a little bit more about the difference between your PAR operation before and now with COVID?
Definitely. So before, we'd get a lot of walk-in patrons. We'd help people here. People would be able to walk in for advice, use the computers. We'd walk people through the steps. And we used to get a lot of older users, people that wanted to get involved but didn't really know how to use the computers. So we'd be able to help them do that. So right now we're basically mostly doing trainings via Zoom. People can still call us. We still get a lot of phone calls and emails, so that part hasn't changed. This was a challenging session, as you guys know. We kind of, there's a break in between session. We came back, I think, in July, and so a session was a bit difficult. I think next session will be difficult as well. The building may still be closed, in which case I think the legislature would allow remote testimony. So that's something that people have been looking forward to for a while. So that's a good thing. That's something that's good that came out of this pandemic. But yeah, a lot less training here, a lot more training. I mean, a lot more communication via email, talking to people on the phone, as opposed to being able to, meet people in our office and help them here. So very different. Yeah, our office has been closed since the beginning of March, I think. So it's definitely different for Virginia and I, because we enjoy the actual hands-on, training here at the bar, but we're not able to do that. So hopefully sometime in the near future. But right now, we are allowed to do training via Zoom, and we're doing a lot of that. So just a little bit, it takes a little bit getting used to, with the new setup and stuff. But yeah, that's how it's different.
Ken, a quick question. Do you know if there's anything like your office at the county levels?
There is not actually. People have asked us. I'm not aware of a type of resource like us at the county levels. We actually do get a lot of calls that are county calls, county related calls. And luckily, I can answer those as well because I used to work at the city council for 4 years. But there's no office like us that we know that is at the county level of government. So we people just give us a call, and of course we're happy to help if we can.
Oh man, if we advertise that, you're gonna get twice as many calls, I think.
It's been a busy week. You know, my colleague Virginia Beck, the public access room coordinator, she's on a very well-deserved vacation. So I've been working alone, and it's been somewhat challenging, but fun. So yeah.
Awesome.
Hey, Captain. Yeah, sorry, I kind of rushed through my presentation because I didn't want to go over too much time. So
No, sorry, Keanu. You did really great. And I think, we just wanted to give people a taste because like I mentioned, we wanted to make the session a little bit more broad so it could cover county or different kinds of change that people might be seeking, not just at the state level. And I know you guys do a lot of similar trainings where you go through the whole website. Like we didn't want to take away from your presentations too. So hoping
no
that by
worries.
connecting people with it, and gonna talk to one of the organizers about how to send follow-up emails and sending out your website information. And if you had anything you wanted us to highlight, please let us know and we can work on that email.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we're doing more. Virginia and I talked about doing bulletins. We started doing it, which is more short types of information, like just one page instead of the 4-page newsletter. So